She does have 2 sisters and a cousin. And actually, another cousin. Now I'll go on to morsels, which is behind Terry. This hanging includes scraps of vintage kimono material from the mid-20th century. Kimono fabric is less than 12 inches wide. And so I was able to send for some. And I made small gift bags from various pieces before creating this one from scraps. I believe the silks and woolens are so lovely it would be a shame to waste even a morsel. I made 2 of these. That one took first place where somewhere in Newcastle at the Conference. Yeah, it's sponsored by the boy. Beading scraps further embellishes the beauty of each, turning these scraps into tiny jewels, thus honoring a tradition. And this is the poem that I threw at you. This is morsels too. This is the second one I did. Morsels of delight, hanging on a flight of fantasy, colors whirling, swirling, swirling, oblivious to the others, yet part of the whole. Joy springs from colors. And that's it. I hope I'm doing this on the right track. Okay, we're down to frogs. We skipped frogs. I'm not really sure what caused this. Maybe Ginger remembers the story, I don't know. But it's Ginger Huber's fault I brought this frog because she insisted that I bring the frogs. But this past winter I thought I should have a frog really, and I made it the same way as I made her. She's made from muslin. And if you show them her hat, her name's Kerplop. It's a lily pad hat, and she's sitting on a lily pad cushion, which is painted with Lumiere paints. Yeah, so she also has relatives. There's 2 more of them. And yeah, I actually thought the frog would make the elf feel better because they're both green. I was hoping to make her feel better about it. Okay, let me go back to my thing here. The embroidery bag, I'm going to pass them around. I don't have a story going. Oh, thank God you said. This, when I was working on something, I thought I'd like to take this with me. And I like to buy, from the Salvation Army, I buy linen sometimes, just a skirt. I like to take it up to the counter at size 2 and buy it, watch them look at me. But I thought, wow, I could make a bag and then it would open up. And then it would have a pin cushion that Velcros on. And so I called this, My Soul is Fed with Needles and Thread. And they're pockets, so I'll pass it around. You guys probably appreciate it.
You think it's going to come back to you?
Yeah. I know where you live, Linda, baby.
You want to do this?
This one bag also took place down at the Hoyt. It's watercolor painted on cotton sheet, on plain cotton. And I've used some Lumiere on the back and it's beaded. And then it has a little, the other thing with it, on the counter here, the little, it says here, I'll read it, if you want to read it. Of course not. Yeah, it's a little change purse that goes with it, and it says there's a double beauty whenever a swan swims in a lake with her double thereon, Thomas Wood. It's a quote. I'll pass it. You want to pass it over? Okay. Might not get that one back. And the other bag, the bag beside it is water lilies. And it has a back to it. And I think it has a fish inside of it too. Actually, I got carried away that time. Does it have a fish on one of the pockets? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
they'll have to see it when they look at it.
And turn it around to the back. I love water lilies, and of course Monet kind of overdid them. I think mine are as good as his, but never seems
You
to
start this
matter.
one at the back and it can come forward.
And, Glenn Signs was nice enough to make me bag holders. That one's made out of his stash of wood. So, okay, back to mine. Dave Yoder's Yodeler. Dave Yoder is an Irishman, and he allowed our guild to paint plein air, on his property. So both of these paintings are from there. And I wrote Dave Yoder's Yodeler to go with this. I was hunting for a subject on an Amish farm, watching the grapevine like curtain slung over a casual frame, a theater set, just waiting for the star to make an appearance. Suddenly, out from behind the curtain popped the star. The evening sun was ignoring the approaching storm, and it both backlit and frontlit the stage. Overhead, the grape leaves danced, while those to the side, out of the wind, waited sleepily for the daylight to end. Down front, a random gathering of leaves looked on. All of the leaves, all of the shapes, the colors, and the night sky behind. How colorful, how lively, how fragile is the stage set for a performance. I wanted to catch the movement, the colors, the very transitory feeling of the moment, and the foul, bringing such confidence to the performance. And it really is not over till the fat lady sings. That's Dave Yoder's Yodeler. And the next one is also from his.
Frame too. Who made the frame? It's a beautiful frame.
Glenn Signs does, oh my friend, he's wonderful. If you don't know Glenn, he's by Palmer Pools outside of Mercer. This is In Defense of the Field. It's called In Defense of the Field. Get it? You have to think
But it's
fast.
not spelled that way.
No. The farmer stakes out his territory against the wild. Fence posts marching soldier-like across the land. From the wild come marching the brambles, equally determined to fend off civilization. Since fence posts can't send out runners, and their only fruit is barbed wire, the brambles laden with berries appear in the balance to be the winners. I hope there's always that struggle where nature kind of wins. Tim says, not at our house, and we're snakes. Now I'm going to do Freedom Road Cemetery. And this is, are you familiar with Freedom Road? You should be if you're in the Historical Society. Across from the Stoneboro Fairgrounds is Freedom Road Cemetery. Do you know it? No. Well, we shall go there.
Directly across from the.
Directly
from the fair.
across. There's a
It's a
small
parking lot.
state sign.
Is it behind that?
No, it's directly across.
It's up the hill and it's wild. I mean, you can walk through it.
No, when you start down the hill, before you get to the entrance, as you're going down the hill, there's like a wooded area there. But the cemetery's in that little wooded area.
Is there a road into it, or you just?
No, you walk.
Well, they have a race. One of the churches there has a race every year, and it's at night, and they have luminaries all along the race. And one of the places that you run through is that cemetery.
The day that I was there in the morning, that is a slave buried. He was a slave, but once you'll understand why I read the story. But the sun cut through and lit up that back tree like a ghost tree, and I still get goosebumps when I remember standing there. It was quiet. It was just sacred, and so that's why I came home and painted it. Freedom Road Cemetery, just across the road from the Great Stoneboro Fairgrounds, does not shout patriotism. And I think that's probably appropriate for the conversations that we've been hearing. But I climb And that has to do with universal messages. I used to tell my students, if you write something and someone reads it 100 years from now, if it still holds truth, it has what I call a universal message. It goes on and on. So I think that's true of this particular cemetery. I climb an overgrown hill in search of this place where freed slaves are buried. A sunbeam strikes one particular tombstone, that of a freed slave who served in the Civil War, fighting to preserve the freedom that he and his brothers had never known until they reached this place in Mercer County. Here on the banks of Stoneboro Lake, freed slaves found peace in 1825. That's when they settled there. They named their new home Liberia, and they shared it with Indians. Within Freedom Road Cemetery, the flag assumes a quieted passion. To those buried here, freedom represents an agonizingly slow struggle. Above the modest markers, a ghostly tree symbolizes the settlers of western Pennsylvania who once stood sentinel as agents for the Underground Railroad, because as we all know, this area was very significant in the Underground Railroad. Right, Jane? You indexed. I suppose that through the ages, other folks have found an enriched interpretation of freedom in this humble cemetery. Scout troops have erected wooden crosses here so that the names of these quiet folks could be remembered and honored for their part in America's struggles. No, Freedom Road does not shout patriotism. The trees here whisper stories of the folks who followed the North Star to freedom and peace. The sun picks out names and dates on time-worn stones. Leaves flutter across trodden earth under which lie unmarked heroes. The Allegheny County Historical Society reports in a neighborhood of 200 burials in this particular cemetery. I have goosebumps on my arms even though the July breeze is warm. No, Freedom Road does not shout patriotism. It just whispers the story of freedom until gradually the meaning sweeps over me in waves, great flag waves, red like the blood pouring from whiplashes on work-worn backs, blue like the lake nearby that offered freedom, white like the North Star, followed by those who found freedom here. Red, white, and blue patriotism. It's here in Freedom Road, and I am so proud and thankful to have found this sacred spot in the hills of western Pennsylvania. Glad the lady's wearing my shirt.
Books in that cemetery.
It's a wonderful place, and actually, that particular cross right there, the Boy Scouts marked them. The guy's name is spelled wrong, but just by a letter, so they meant well. And then the next painting is not watercolor, it's gouache. Gouache is a kind of a cross between watercolor and actually pastels. That is the mill in Spartansburg, Pennsylvania, on the way to Quarry. And I'm glad I painted them when it was those colors, because now they've repainted it a different color.
They added things to it.
They added things to it now. I caught it when it was right. And I called this perhaps patriotism began in a mill. Patriotism is defined as love of country. Country to me is rooted in rural scenes and values. In the beginning of this great nation, sparse populations of farmers and woodsmen worked in isolation. A bit later, small centers of population grew generally around the mills. Farmers and woodsmen made repeated trips to their local mill, relishing a bonus exchange of information, both life-saving and entertaining. Today, western Pennsylvania's mills, sawmills, grain mills, tower over their small towns like the kindly protective giants they have always been. They stand tall with the names of their respective towns emblazoned proudly on their chests. Gary, are you listening?
I am.
Through wars and depressions, period of plenty, as well as lean years, the walls of our mills have resounded with discussions, sometimes heated, just as often semi-frozen, filled with politics and local humor. In many ways, our mills have been a platform for patriotism, and whether or not we consciously recognize the feeling as we rush by these patriarchs of agriculture and forestry, inside us rises a swell of emotion based on the recognition of how things were, how they are now, and how they could be in the future. I think it's a universal message of sorts that we get from these places that sometimes we rush to tear down. Number 17. Number 17's over here. This is a 1919 Fordson tractor that belongs to the Alexander family in Cool Spring Township. Their farm is the earliest one in Cool Spring. Do you know where Cool Spring is? Cool Spring Township, Cool Spring Church. And Alexander's invited our guild to go out and paint. And I painted several things there. But I saw this tractor and I wrote number 17. I've always marveled, and maybe you have too, at the herds of farm machinery lying at leisure throughout the fields of western Pennsylvania. Often their heads peer from outbuildings and barns. They're a patient lot, the no longer used members of the farm community. They stand idle. Well, it's a Gary doesn't. No. I guess Gary has to stand there and hold it. They stand idle, watching as you approach them, and they evaluate your capability of actually putting them back to use. Did you know that? The farm machinery is watching you, and they're hoping against hope. You glance at them, not really concentrating on their potential. Sometimes their brightly painted frames catch your eye for more than a moment, and you pause to consider their age, their model, their manufacturer. Then on you go, never noticing how they seem to sag in disappointment that they are not going to be put back to work. Work, the dream of all farm equipment, the tractors, combines, threshers, all chomping at the bit to get out there in the fields to listen to their pistons sing, their belts taut against the wind, their tires rolling merrily to some inner rhythm, to some soul song of the worker. I've often thought how much these machines are like calliopes. Do you know what calliopes are? Jane, do you? Huh?
Sure.
Okay, good. Those musical instruments fitted with steam whistles and played from a keyboard. When I approach an idle tractor with its brightly painted metal, I imagine that when it is in the field, it fires up the farmer, its keyboard operator, and with all of its mechanical energy, it plays its very own song, bouncing and steaming back and forth across the fields until exhausted the music stops, the job finished. If there were a heaven for farm equipment and each piece had its own shed in which to display its talents, I can imagine that as you approached, the music would begin, calliope-like, and that tractor, if it were a tractor, would play its heart out just for you. Its very own tune, making you stand before it, making you listen with glee, commanding your full attention until at last the job was done, the last note played, the air stilled, the pistons of all listening hearts beating together in rhythm. I recently visited such a tractor on the Alexander farm in Cool Spring Township, and there I learned this particular tractor prefers the music of Stephen Foster, particularly number 17. It was written just before the Civil War. It's a round dance in 2/4 time, perfect for a tractor's pistons. As you visit with the idle farm machinery of western Pennsylvania, you might find yourself listening to the music of the mechanical giants. I dare say nobody will go past a piece of farm machinery sitting in the field without thinking about this. Some prefer Scott Joplin's ragtime, still others lean to classical Gesundheit. You might hear a combine humming the mold out or a bolero, And some of the elders whose efforts have slowed, I can relate, prefer a good old Leon Redbone number. You must listen carefully because they all have something very significant to offer. And listening to them is an honor reserved for a very special few. So I'll be watching.
Lillian, I was at a picnic Saturday night at Alexander's, and I invited Carolyn, but she had a meeting tonight where she was treasurer.
They're missing people.
The very first time I went to their house and I went into the bathroom to use
It's
the bathroom.
in the bathroom.
There was that picture right in front of me.
It was what he wanted for his birthday. Tim, did you?
Have you published that one?
No. I don't know.
Why haven't you?
I don't know.
Have you
I've been
written
busy.
Is there a way to get a copy?
Sure. I can email you.
Is
We
that
put
tractor
goods in
sitting
front
on
of
the
it.
62?
Big part?
Is that tractor sitting on the 62?
No. It's where Cool Spring Church is.
Okay,
You go up one pitch
okay.
and turn right, and it's back in there. It's a huge.
Because there's one on 62.
Well, I know where you mean. He collects tractors, but as far as I know, Alexander still have their tractor. He's very fond of them.
Have you ridden the tractor?
No,
Then where did you get all that description?
I don't know. It's in my head.
Very good.
Thank you. The next one is Trees Quilt My Earth, and that's somewhere here. I did this one first and then wrote the piece. And if you look at it up close, it has a poem written all the way around the tree, in with the branches and so on. It has fungus in it. It has a leaf in it. It has material. It has paint. I think that's everything. But it's watercolor gouache, watercolor brush pen, acrylic, cotton, and then this natural fibers dye. So it says this, if you get up close to it, you can see. Trees quilt my earth, held fast by root stitches that weave together ancient soils. They sink into valleys, rise over hills and mountains like a sleeping child's comforter. Earth sinks under the weight of their magnificence, holds them high in their majesty, the proud owner of a spiritually wrought masterpiece. They reach deep into the earth and finding sustenance stretched to the heavens, honoring the source of their creation. A season for everything, they whisper, a time to burst forth, yet a time to rest, a time to weep, a time to rejoice. When the earth is angry, the trees tremble in the wind and bend close to the earth, as earth clutches her blanket to her breast. Sometimes the blanket is rent or burned, and it takes time and skilled hands to repair the damage. My earth is quilted with trees, my quilt, the most wondrous of fibers of wool and silk and the finest of cottons, held together by the finest of roots and stems, a quilt fit for a queen. And the next one is timber. I'm running out of this here. I brought along the timber that I owned and painted the piece and then wrote what it meant to me. And you have a copy of the tin bird. I thought you would understand it better if you saw the actual tin bird that I used to paint it. He's purple and cream, his flight a pipe dream. Tin bird can't fly, can't soar in the sky. A holder of flowers, tinny-shelled bower, his purpose, his thing, kept clutching buds in his wings. Once he meant to fly, then try after try, all the stems broke and dropped in a stroke, full blooms at his feet. Soft petals, so sweet, divine, wept for him the bird made of tin. Dreamer of dreams and flying schemes, of flight through night with the light from the moon and silver beams streamed from the stars. But he could not fly, couldn't get to the sky. I think it's just as well to be a little tin bird standing warily in a field of flowers, daisies, and clovers, never longing to leave or having to grieve empty green bowers, broken stems of flowers, roses, nor daffodils. never offer a tin trill for jonquils on a hill. If I were a purple tin bird, I would sing to myself, unheard in that bed of velvety flowers. So thankful for these precious hours, and that I was tin, at least for this day, and be content not to fly away. All of us are tin birds sometimes, if only for a day. That's that one. And I paint my, oh yeah, this is me. This is me. I should have included that with coffee filters. The little book on the left is made out of coffee filters. And I wrote the story in it. It's called Moon Hanging 101, and the name of the piece is Her Turn to Hang the Moon. My turn to hang the moon, I thought when I made it. And inside the story, it tells you how to hang the moon, what you have to get, what you have to be, what you have to do. And that one just placed where, yeah. And then on the back, can you flip it? Just light. The back is, you don't want a plain back. I'm almost done, so anyway. I write paintings. That's what I do. I write paintings and I paint words. I stitch thoughts to canvas. Images and words are inseparable. If I say Christmas tree, you see a tree. And if you see a tree, you say Christmas tree. You do it all the time, you're just maybe not as well. But I wanted to sum up a couple of things. One, I wrote, apologies to Travis Martin, who wrote Boxcar Willie. This is called Boxcar Willie. You can't put me in a box. I've thrown away all of the locks and the keys are gone forever. Boxes are oblong and square around, so beware of putting me there where I'd never, never, never be happy. Instead, put me in a cloud where no structure's allowed and time flows on like a river. I'm too big for your box, from my box to my socks, and your boxes just make me quiver, not happy. My soul rushes on, my tether's all gone, leaving captors all in a dither. Take your box and your lid and just burn them instead, and never wonder ever if I'm happy. And the last one I'd like to dedicate to all the people who've kept track of history, who've given us stories, who've given us pictures and words, images and words, and all the people who are going to in the future. And I call it once and again. Once and again. Once I was young, and my story was short. Now I am old and have much to report. Once I was a raindrop, clearly transparent. Now I am a river deepened by torrents. Only the sun, the moon, and the rain will repeat our stories again and again. That's it.
My favorite piece.
My favorite piece of what's here.
Of everything. Anything else about it? It's not here.
Probably, maybe it's Pioneer Seed Corner. It might be the one I'm working on now, but Pioneer Seed Corner I like a lot. It was at the Alexander farm, and the way the sun was coming in and hit a bag of corn, it was like the center of everybody's universe starting shell corn, I think.
You
Yes.
stand by that painting, I'll send one to Carolyn. You stand by that painting, I'll send a picture to Carolyn.
She probably wouldn't want it, I don't know.
I think she wants a picture of you.
Oh, okay.
Got your picture of the mill, Spartanburg. Is that the one that sits on the right-hand side when you're going east, just after you go across the railroad tracks?
Yes. It sits back in, the water's back in there. And there's always geese and stuff on it. Boy, am I red. I don't like to do this. That's the sad part of being a writer. It's a lonely sport. You don't do it with other people, and the same with painting. And then, you have to talk to people.
You don't wanna give them up,
Huh?
and then you don't wanna give them up.
You get attached to it. I think if you don't paint something to sell it, you get very attached to it because, it meant something to you. I have sold, UPMC bought for their primary collection, bought a garden that I had done. It was in a show, and then
The Women's Center. in
at the
Hermitage.
Women's Center in Hermitage, if you're ever in there, it's probably, yes.
Just something you said, just got a second question. What do you do with this when you take it home?
Ask Ginger. Ginger will tell you.
Their closet's full of stuff.
Shame to keep it in the closet.
You tell her, I keep telling her that.
Yeah.
That,
Not all of it is in the closet.
no. Spartansburg is hanging, and so is the fat lady who's singing.
Number 5.
Number 5
Trees
in the
quote my
tree,
earth.
and the bug rooms at Free Will.
How many do you have in the closet?
Probably a couple
Do you have a place like your studio that you can display them like you did before?
I have a craft room, and it's, stand here and you beads or
The other question regarding the creative process there, you just said, unless I decide this, do you decide beforehand you're going to make a piece of art to sell?
No, never.
What makes you think you want to sell it after you're done?
She
I never
doesn't.
do.
She doesn't.
I mean, people have bought things, but if you, in my opinion, I don't do this for a living. And if you make something and then you sell it, to me, it's prostitution of your art because you created it and it's there and it's living. It's like selling one of your kids. You could give it away, but you couldn't sell it.
Your thing on the tractor really struck a chord with me. I anthropomorphize a whole lot of stuff, and I hate to turn a car in because I feel like
You get
I'm hurting his feelings. So I'd really like to copy that for more reasons than just that.
I do think that, and Lucy will probably back me up on this, in order to create, you have to spend a lot of time alone. You have to be alone with your thought process, and you have to allow it to have time. And that's why I'm not really in favor of scheduling kids constantly, because I grew up under the hollyhocks making clothing for my guinea pig, Dooley. And you have to have that time to make your world. And if you are always shopping, which I love to shop, same as anybody else, but that is a creative energy. Does pink go with green? Does yellow go with, are these shoes? And when that's expended, that day it's gone. You can't get it back. You have to be alone with yourself, and you have to allow yourself, your mind, to wander. Now, some would say, she's wandered a bit far. Put her somewhere safe where she won't hurt anybody. But there's a fine line, and I do think children should have. You agree with that, Sue? Time to explore and know what the earth is like, and be with animals, and not have plastic things.
How much do you pay Vanna White there?
Huh?
How much do you pay Vanna White there?
Oh,
He does a nice job.
he does a nice job. He's
Lillian, I don't know how to ask you this question, but you say you paint from your heart.
I did.
Now, is there ever a time that you looked at something, knew you should paint it, but refrained from painting it because you might upset people or something, and so you painted it in a different way?
No.
No. You painted.
I don't care who gets upset at all.
Okay.
But last year I was working on a Mary Wick, so I didn't paint as much, and I missed that. But then you get into a zone and you don't know, 4 or 5 hours go by and you think, wow, I better get out of my pajamas. I have a dread fear, I get up and sometimes I forget to get out of my pajamas and I look at the clock, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. I think, what if somebody comes and they think I just got up? And I've been thinking, I'll make time.
Question about your book, how many copies do we have here yet?
I don't know.
There's 2 out there. Mary Whip, you mean?
Yeah, because I
There's
want
at
to
least
give
2
another
out
plug on Facebook.
I want to say too, you said, it's ironic, you said, are you listening, Gary? Because I was,
I like to pick on.
I know you like, I was listening, but I was thinking, and every now and then, at my age, I can still do that. Listen and think at the same time. And I've often thought, you probably have also, during time, whether it's your children, grandchildren, or neighbors' children, what's going through their mind? You're thinking, a baby, you can't. I wish they had a way of hooking up their brain and showing you a picture. What are you thinking? Well, tonight we got a little glimpse. We got a little glimpse of what.
But I think the thing about watercolor and Margaret Williams is adults are terrified of watercolor. It's so uncontrollable, they say. But children aren't afraid of that. They love to put water together with colors and make a big thing, whatever it is. And once their eye, it's just your eye, everybody has that, they just don't always use it. Once your eye focuses on the peony, and it's white and it's pink, and you have water, then you can make the peony. And Margaret Williams believed that. She believed that if you would tell children that early on, they would always have something to do. When I'm 106, I could still do that. Yeah, Tim?
Talk too much here. I just wanted to recommend, it's not a movie for everybody, but I only watch a movie about once a year. I hardly ever have television on. But there's a movie I watched about 6 months ago. It's called Words and Pictures. And it speaks to this. It's Juliette Binoche is in it. And she plays a college professor, comes to the school, and she's an artist.
I did see it a while back.
Yeah, she's an artist, and she's got onset of multiple sclerosis, I think. She gets into a big fight, takes over the whole school between, she's an artist and this guy that's a writer. He teaches writing, she teaches art, and they have this contest as to what's the most important thing, words or images. And that's the story. It's the movie it's called Words and Pictures.
And you don't know, some children learn by images, and some children learn by words. So you have to figure out what will get to that child. And as far as cutting art and music and so on from the schools, I'm very much opposed to that, because for some children, that's the only reason they get up in the morning is because they're going to dance or play in the band or paint. And, and we're saying that isn't important, but a lot of things that people do, they're not going to do their entire lives. But once you feel confident doing something, you can always do it. You can always do your music. You can always dance.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
I'm done. Okay.
Your mind and your heart, and Jane wants to.
I just want to say, if you'd like to take some of Lillian's art with you, we have these cards, $10 a packet. This is the Pioneer Seed Corn. She said it was her favorite. Right?
It is, I think.
Is that, is there more than one rendering?
Well,
of it?
yeah.
Oh, okay, well, this is a
But,
rendering of it.
that is,
There's the tractor.
I like to steamboat on Sandy Lake too.
Yeah,
because
so if you're interested, these are
It
available.
depends. Depends on the nature.
There's refreshments in the next room, or you can sit here and talk to Lily and ask more
Dunkin'
questions,
Donuts.
whatever.
There's lots of good goodies over here.
Can we eat and talk to Lillian at the same time?
Dunkin' Donuts.
I say, can we
Yes.
eat and Lillian and talk at the same time?
Actually, rather than have a coffee. Joe Bullock, he's in that steamboat, or the steamboat. You should visit Sandy Lake sometime, Stonewall, because that's a rich history of Underground Railroad and freed slaves before the Civil War. And they closed the beach, which
Nothing more adorable. I just found it a couple years ago.
Why did they close it?
The lady doesn't want, it's expensive to operate.
Financial, yeah.
It's awful. I can remember when I was 4 and 5 years old, my parents would say we were going to Stoneboro Lake. My heart beat so hard, all the way to the lake. I mean, I was just, beside myself. So, yeah, doesn't take much to amuse a child. It really doesn't. It should.
I think a lot of it was liability too.
That's a lot. I know Scott Black, the undertaker, he does scuba diving. He's done a lot of trips down to find bodies or people that were lost. That's one thing he's always done. You have to love Stoneboro and Sandy Lake because they take care of each other really well, voluntarily.
And if they're going up that way and you're interested in something like this tractor here, are you aware that there's one setting on the right-hand side going north, just before you get to the road that takes off towards the school, going up 173?
173. Yes, I have seen it. It's on the right-hand side as you're going to Polk or Oak Street.
The guy has it preserved and it's setting up on a pedestal of some kind.
Or just come to my house. I must have 20 restored tractors.
Well, thank you for coming, I appreciate it. Grove City, I just have a very close friend who moved from Greenville to Black Mountain, North Carolina, because Greenville was so devoid of appreciation for art. And she's quite an artist, and now she's been featured in Asheville's art magazine, and it's hard. It must be hard for the kids. I know kids who've left here, who were in the guild or who were from Grove City and just bright kids. There is not a nourishment for the arts here as there is in some other areas, and we hate to lose our kids because of that. Just give people enough rope to hang themselves or enough space to do their wild things, whatever it happens to be. It might not be as evil as you think. Okay, go eat. Find something to do. And thank you again for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I should be classy.
Yeah, I don't know what's in there.
Yeah, because that's more, this is